Methinks I see a spark, a gleam, a glimmer of a plan, by which perhaps I may redeem my honor as a man. I was in the 12th grade, a slightly skinny, slightly awkward, and slightly terrified Captain Hook. My acting journey began in a clunky high school rendition of the 1954 Broadway classic, Peter Pan. This was not a story I knew very much about. I was vaguely aware that there was out there somewhere a Disney movie, an animated thing. There was a book. I guess I knew the main idea. Child, Wendy, and her brothers, the Darling Children, venture off into a semi-fantastical dreamland where their tour guide, Peter Pan, is a boy who refuses to grow old. For one reason or another, my high school, which rarely seemed to have money for basic supplies or library books, decided that this show would be the event of the year, and so we spared no expense. We hired a stunt coordinator to teach Peter Pan and I how to sword fight. We rented an elaborate series of pulleys and levers to hoist the Darling Children into the sky, and we had fabricated for me a very heavy, extremely sharp, and incredibly dangerous iron hook that I kind of wish I had been able to keep. This show happened at a bit of an odd period in my life, probably an odd period in most of our lives. I was on the cusp of adulthood and facing down some very serious decisions, and not just decisions about how I would portray Captain Hook, but decisions about kind of person I wanted to be and where I would go to school, what I would do for work, that sort of thing. And facing these decisions sort of reframed a lot of what I was thinking about myself. It got me thinking about adulthood for the first time ever. It got me thinking about fatherhood, not my own fatherhood, but about my own father. And that was mostly because I hadn't spoken to mine in about 10 years at that point. My parents' marriage fell apart one year around Christmas time. I hadn't noticed anything too abnormal or too tense. It felt to me sort of like things just fell apart one day, and my dad a little bit disappeared. He came by every so often. Once he had with him a satellite dish, a very cool piece of technology that I was excited to learn could beam down television shows from outer space. But then one day, not so long after it was installed, a snowstorm came through and the dish got caked with slush and ice and the TV signal disappeared. It was around that time that my mom's brother and my worst uncle sat me down and told me that I had a new job. And my new job was to take care of my mother. He told me that I was now the man of the house. And this was a bit of a surprise to me because I was 10 and I didn't even know how to clear slush off a satellite dish. But it nevertheless was a job that I took extremely seriously. And when my mom moved us west to middle of no place, Alberta, it became a key part of my identity. And so my dad and I didn't really speak. In a vacuum, Captain Hook is a really weird character. He is a middle-aged, very emotional, quite violent pirate, and all of his enemies are children. Children and a crocodile. There's a crocodile, and the crocodile has a clock in his belly, and it tick-tocks, and it chases Hook around, and it's like the most hackneyed metaphor ever, because Hook is literally afraid of the passage of time. Hook's story ends without much fanfare, without much growth. Hook gets cornered at the end of his pirate ship, chased down by the tick-tocking croc and a small child wielding a sword, and he recedes, disappears into the sea. On a summer evening in my mid-20s, I was in the backyard having a beer with my dad. He looked so much older than I remembered. His curly hair was still extremely wild. His stubble was still pointy and sharp, and his smoker's cough was still booming and terrible. I'm sure that he thought I looked older too. On my final night as Captain Hook, I looked out into the audience, and I thought about my mom and my brother and my sister, who I knew were out there somewhere, unseen, but probably very proud. I thought as well about my dad, who was not out there. And so I stood at the edge of the stage, my eyes on the blank horizon, imagining the gurgling sea below. And with a slow, tiny step, I walked off the plank. Thanks.